Stephen King's Holly, published in September 2023, continues his tradition of merging suspense with the supernatural and psychological thrills. As one of the most prolific writers in modern American literature, King delves into complex, thought-provoking themes, combining them with darkly riveting storylines. In Holly, he returns to a familiar face, Holly Gibney, a private investigator whose character appeared in earlier works, most notably Mr. Mercedes and The Outsider. This novel falls squarely into the crime thriller genre, but true to King's style, it ventures into darker, more eerie territory, blending horror with a meditation on human nature's capacity for evil. Holly is set in the post-pandemic world, specifically in the months following the COVID-19 crisis. This contemporary backdrop plays a crucial role in shaping the tone of the novel, as it reflects the societal shifts that occurred after the pandemic. Stephen King masterfully incorporates the lingering effects of isolation, fear, and societal anxiety into the world Holly inhabits. The pandemic's aftermath is not just a setting detail, but also serves as an undercurrent that reflects the novel's themes of loneliness and vulnerability. The setting is an unnamed Midwestern town, which feels simultaneously familiar and unsettling. King's ability to infuse ordinary locations with a sense of dread is fully evident here. On the surface, the town seems like a typical American community, a quiet place where everyone knows their neighbors, but this idyllic facade quickly gives way to something far more sinister. This small-town normalcy becomes the breeding ground for unspeakable horrors, making the mundane terrifying. The sense of community, which has traditionally been a safe and comforting idea, is perverted in Holly into a landscape of hidden dangers and lurking evils. The pandemic recovery also shapes the characters, particularly Holly herself, who has become more self-sufficient but also more isolated. The shadow of COVID-19 hovers over the story, affecting how characters interact with one another and influencing the ways in which fear and paranoia play into their lives. King uses this post-pandemic environment to subtly suggest how societal trauma can fester and lead to deeper problems, reflecting the same kind of slow-brewing horror that drives the plot. The story begins when Holly is approached to investigate the disappearance of multiple individuals, a case that has inexplicably slipped under the radar of local law enforcement. As she digs deeper, Holly's inquiry leads her to Roddy and Emily Harris, a seemingly harmless elderly couple respected in their small town. The Harrises live in a grand Victorian-style home, and at first glance, they appear to be nothing more than aging intellectuals enjoying retirement. However, Holly soon discovers a horrifying truth lurking beneath their charming facade. Roddy and Emily are ruthless serial killers who have been preying on the vulnerable members of their community for years. The couple's method of selecting and trapping their victims is chillingly calculated. They target individuals who have been forgotten by society, those who are elderly, disabled, or socially marginalized, and offer them shelter, comfort, and a false sense of security. These individuals, already isolated, make easy prey for the couple's sadistic schemes. King masterfully heightens the tension as Holly unearths the grotesque reality behind the Harrises' polished exterior. Roddy and Emily approach murder with cold detachment, turning their victims into subjects for twisted experiments. Their home becomes a macabre laboratory for human suffering, where their carefully orchestrated killings blur the lines between cruelty and scientific detachment. As Holly's investigation progresses, the novel also delves into her personal struggles. Having faced significant trauma in her past, Holly grapples with self-doubt, loneliness, and anxiety. Her internal conflict adds emotional depth to the narrative, as she battles not only the external threat posed by the Harrises, but also her own insecurities. Throughout the novel, Holly's journey is both an investigation into the couple's dark crimes and a metaphorical exploration of her own fears and resilience. This duality adds richness to the story, making it as much about Holly's personal growth as it is about solving the case. The Harrises themselves are some of the most unsettling villains King has created. Their outward charm and intellectual demeanor serve as a stark contrast to the horrors they commit in secret. Roddy and Emily's education and manners mask their true nature, and King builds a creeping sense of dread as the full extent of their depravity is revealed. The tension escalates as Holly pieces together the evidence, slowly uncovering the couple's disturbing methods and the full scale of their crimes. The novel's climax is a gripping confrontation between Holly and the Harrises, one that is both physically and psychologically intense. What makes this showdown particularly unnerving is how close to normalcy the Harrises appear. They are educated, well-spoken, and seemingly benign, yet they are capable of committing unspeakable horrors. This clash between Holly and the couple highlights one of the central themes of the novel, the proximity of evil to everyday life. Roddy and Emily are not supernatural monsters, but ordinary people who have chosen to embrace the darkest parts of their humanity. King's Holly isn't just a straightforward thriller. It touches on themes of systemic neglect, how society overlooks the suffering of its most vulnerable citizens, and the fragility of justice. Holly herself is a study in resilience. Despite her anxiety and past trauma, she refuses to back down. King explores the idea of ordinary evil through the couple, whose crimes take place in broad daylight under the cover of normalcy. This exploration evokes a sense of dread, suggesting that malevolence often hides in plain sight, disguised by respectability and privilege. An interesting concept introduced in Holly is the tension between the idea of invisible people and invisible crimes. The Harrises' victims are often those society would easily overlook: the elderly, the disabled, the marginalized. In this way, King comments on societal apathy, particularly toward people whose lives are not seen as valuable or noteworthy. The pandemic's aftermath serves as a fitting metaphor for this as well, highlighting how quickly society can move on from trauma without addressing the lingering pain of those most affected. While King's earlier works often leaned heavily into the supernatural, Holly takes a different approach by largely eschewing paranormal elements in favor of psychological horror and social critique. The novel draws its suspense from the slow unraveling of seemingly normal characters into something terrifying and grotesque. It also raises moral questions. What allows certain people to commit atrocities while maintaining a facade of normalcy? How does trauma shape those who seek justice in such cases? Ultimately, Holly serves as both a gripping crime thriller and a contemplation of moral and societal decay. The central mystery is engaging and chilling, but King's true strength lies in how he peels back the layers of his characters to reveal their vulnerabilities and motivations. Holly Gibney, in particular, is one of King's most complex and relatable protagonists, and Holly allows her character to shine, showcasing her growth from her earlier portrayals as a more secondary character. In conclusion, Holly is another masterwork by Stephen King, a tense thriller that goes beyond its plot to delve into bigger, darker questions about humanity. While it has its gruesome moments, it is ultimately a story about resilience, the pursuit of truth, and the darkness lurking beneath the surface of everyday life. Fans of King's crime novels will find much to love here, while those who appreciate his supernatural works will still detect the faint, unnerving echoes of horror that define much of his oeuvre.